This week, the name on the marquee has certainly got to be Manon the Beast Fiorot, who this past weekend defeated Erin Blanchfield by a unanimous decision. The fight went down in Atlantic City in Erin Blanchfield's home court here, but it did not, unfortunately, go her way. The visiting team spoiled the party and went home back to France with the win. It was a very unanimous decision. I believe all three judges scored at 50-45 in favor of the French lady. Mark, give us your thoughts. There was a lot said about the game plan of Blanchfield and her corner going into this fight. What are your thoughts? I can't hear you.
And I'm back.
Oh, sorry.
Right about the mute. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to break down in this fight. Manon Fiorot was able to really fight the exact fight that she wanted to fight, and Erin Blanchfield was not able to do anything to change that. She definitely got exposed a bit here for a girl who had a ton of hype behind her coming into this. The size and the strength of Manon Fiorot, I think, was a real problem for her. She kept Erin outside all fight long and picked her apart. Even when they did clinch, the strength was evident and clearly causing problems for Blanchfield. Erin couldn't find any way to enter effectively without being countered. She couldn't find any way to enter effectively to land meaningful shots of her own. They were all kind of like chasing extended shots. Her takedown entries were forced for the most part. It was all Manon. And I'm surprised by that because Manon did nothing new here. She fought exactly how we've seen her fight in all of her previous fights. So that kind of brings me around to what you said as you threw this to me, which is the game plan. Like, I understand it's possible that, Fiorot was just bigger and better than Erin and her team had imagined, and maybe things were harder than they expected them to be. But that aside, you would think this whole camp would have been spent on working different entries into the striking or the takedowns. Like that Blanchfield wasn't going to win this fight on the outside. I think anyone was well aware of that coming into this fight. So you would think when you are fighting Manon Fiorot, you are drilling all camp different entries to be able to work your own game against a girl who is trying to prevent that. And it didn't really seem like anything we saw from Erin had much of a plan behind it. Like, she just got outclassed, and she looked a little desperate at times. She looked like she wasn't sure how to try to change the fight at times, how to approach it. So I don't know. It was strange. I think I and everyone else expected more from Blanchfield. If she lost, she lost, but I think just somewhat more of a showing than what we got from her there, because she really did get outclassed. Manon looked good. I know she doesn't set the world on fire as a contender that people are like chomping at the bit to see fight for the title, just because her style is not really one where she's looking for the finish. But it's gotten her now to the door of the title, so you can't really complain.
No, you can't. I mean, and at the very least, I think she is sort of a newer face. I mean, don't look now. She's like 7-0 in the UFC, but she still, to me, feels like she's kind of a fresh face on the women's side of the promotion here.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it was a case where I think Fiorot I think she seems bigger in there than her 5'7" build height, gives the first impression.
Totally agree.
And she fights big. She seems like a big, athletic, physically strong girl. And let's not forget, she's this is going against my usual shtick here. She's 10 years older than Blanchfield. Blanchfield's only 24.
Yep.
So maybe she's got that mom strength. She's got that middle-aged lady strength. And Blanchfield was a little bit surprised by that. Blanchfield usually, even against someone like Jessica Andrade, Blanchfield, you would think going into that fight that Andrade is going to be the stronger, more compact, like a freaking fire hydrant is Andrade. But Blanchfield bodied her. So here we go against Fiorot, and just too tall, too big, too skilled, and Blanchfield just could not exact her will in this fight and couldn't execute a game plan. and pretty disappointing. But again, as I just alluded to, she's only 24 years old, almost 25. She's 24 years, 10 months. And so soon to be 25, but still very, very young for the sport. Very, very young to be in the UFC, and especially very young to be this high in any division in the UFC.
Yeah, no, that's crazy young to be in a title eliminator. And she's, but by no means is like the book closed on Erin Blanchfield. I'm sure she will be back and we will see plenty more great performances from her. But there's some tape to watch, that's for sure.
Yeah. So Blanchfield's record now falls to 12-2. And the French lady, is it? I want to say Frenchman. Is it French woman? French lady.
French woman? That sounds like it could
French
be the
woman.
case.
Okay. Fiorot's record climbs now to 12-1. The one, by the way, just glancing down her record once again, her debuting pro bout was a split decision loss to Bellator's Leah McCourt. And that was a fight at Cage Warriors 94. But that was a split decision loss. So worth noting, in each and every single one of Manon Fiorot's pro fights, at least one judge gave her the win. For those that went the distance, obviously. She does have a couple by TKO. Let's talk about where the beast goes from here, Mark.
I mean, we know the answer. She is certainly going to sit and wait for her title shot at this point. There's really no reason to do anything else. There's no one. I mean, I guess they could say like, oh, you got to fight Macy Barber. But in my opinion, there's no one else she should be fighting. She should be in line for the winner of Alexa and Valentina. She may have to wait a little bit, as I said, but I think that's exactly what she'll do.
Okay. And the young New Jerseyan, Erin Blanchfield, like I said, her record now falls to, 12-2? So, no, not 12-2. I'm sorry. Yeah, 12-2. The records are very close. What do you think could be next for her?
So I think she is the one who should be fighting Macy Barber. You guys know, last week I mentioned how I really want to see Rose paired with Natalia Silva. That's what I'm hoping for. Obviously, those girls are kind of in this mix as well as potential opponents for Erin. But I think Erin and Macy is the fight to make at this point.
I like it. Erin Blanchfield and Macy Barber. That'd be tremendous. Because what was the talk for Macy to fight? Was it Dern?
I don't think it was Dern. That's not the right weight class.
Oh, what was the chatter of who Barber could be fighting next?
I hadn't heard any.
Oh, you hadn't? Oh, okay.
No.
That'd be a tremendous fight, and they haven't fought each other yet.
No.
Man, that'd be a tough one. Who would I be rooting for in that fight? I love them both so much. I mean, I gotta go with Blanchfield, man. I know some of her team now.
I figured you would.
Yeah, got to. But dude, I love the future, man. Okay, let's move on. Ooh, this is going fast. Sorry, Omar. Okay, in the co-main event, Joaquin Buckley gets the biggest win of his career by defeating Vicente Luque in the second round, the official time 3:17 of round number 2 by TKO via ground and pound. Mark, what were your impressions of how this fight played out with Buckley?
This was an odd finish, and not even close to the oddest one of the night, which tells you something about the type of night this was.
Oh my God.
Which we'll get to some of it. But at the end of the fight, Joaquin Buckley got on top of Luque and started swinging, and Luque just kind of covered up in survival mode for no apparent reason. We hadn't seen him get hurt. We hadn't seen any issue, and he just kind of covered up like a guy who was trying to survive. He didn't try to change the position. He didn't try to hold on to Buckley. There was no attempt to buck or to scramble. He just kind of accepted the shots that were coming to him. And this is a guy in Luque who never quits in a fight. And, he has that reputation, and he's in a big spot here. He's back fighting where he was born and where he lived his early childhood in New Jersey. He has, family and friends in the stands. A co-main event, and he just kind of stopped fighting. I don't get it. And it's not like he was being outclassed to that point. Like, yes, maybe Buckley took round 1, but if he did, it was a close round. The speed was helping Buckley. maybe he was scoring a little more. Round 2 was kind of the same, but Luque was certainly landing his shots as well. There was no reason to think Luque still couldn't have won that fight at that point in time. You know what I mean? Like it's not as if he got his ass beat for 2 rounds and his will was broken or something. It was just a very normal fight with not so many big moments to speak of to that point. And he shot this takedown. It got stuffed and he pulled guard. And that was it. He put his hands to his head and they never left. Like I said earlier, he never tried to grab Buckley. He doesn't even turn to his side. He just accepts 30 shots. He didn't even close his guard. His guard sat open the whole time. Like, I don't know. I don't understand it. I really wish I could hear Luque explain like what his thinking was. And I haven't yet, because when it ended, the thought in my head, and I hate saying this, is that it was a fixed fight. Like that's what it felt like to me. I was just like, what I just watched didn't make any sense. And I don't want to consider that as what was actually happening, but I watched Vicente Luque seemingly choose to not fight anymore. And I don't get why. And I don't want to take anything away from Buckley, just to finish by complimenting him. He fought a great fight and he poured it on and he finished a guy who was ranked number 11 in the division. So big for him. He's now firmly in the mix. The move down to 170 is paying dividends. But the storyline for me was just, again, especially for a fighter like Luque, how confused I was with what happened at the end.
The two thoughts that enter my head are either he was carrying some kind of injury with him into the fight, and at some point in the fight, something flared up on him, or he was more hurt than we realized watching it.
Like, by what? Nothing landed. Like, even to make it weirder, in the post-fight, Joaquin Buckley goes, yeah, he was blocking all that. Don't worry. He's not hurt. He's fine. Like, it was very much like...
It was odd.
I don't know. It was just fucking strange. The whole thing was strange. I would like to hear Omar's take on it too, but I don't get it. And I'm not the only one who's been... I've seen other people tweeting the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, either way, it definitely is the biggest name on Joaquin Buckley's record at this point. He improves now to 18-6 as a pro. Under the UFC banner, he improves to 8-4. That was his 6th knockout / TKO finish in the UFC. He's amassing quite the record. His last 3 wins: Andre Fialho, Alex Morono, and now Vicente Luque in the welterweight ranks here. So what do you think could be or should be next for Numansa?
So my first thought was Jeff Neal. They're at a very similar spot in the rankings. I think it could be an interesting matchup. Then I realized that they kept Neil Magny above him in the rankings as well, which I wasn't expecting. So I know Magny maybe doesn't feel like a step forward after Luque, but for whatever reason, they have kept Magny ahead, or actually, I guess they're tied. They're both 11, but Magny's name's on top. And really, anyone above Neal or Magny is like into the elites, who I don't think Buckley has quite made it to as of yet. So I guess the Magny fight would work as well. So I'll say either one of those would make sense.
What if he fought MVP?
I think they're giving MVP a bigger fish than
Bigger
that.
fish.
But I mean, it'd be fun. It's like I'd be down.
That's true. I mean, I would be down.
Yeah.
Let's talk quickly about the silent assassin here, Vicente Luque, who has been too silent after this loss. I would love to see him take to his social media or something and be like, hey, guys, this is what happened. This is what was going through my head.
Totally. Like, I looked for it because I just figured, I was like, he is going to say something that was too strange, especially, as I said, like in his, I guess it's hometown. He lived there till he was like 6 or 7 or something. So hometown, the whole deal, like you would think he would have something to say. I'm surprised he has not.
Right. Like, it may very easily be something like, I tore my MCL in training, like the fight week, and I didn't want to pull out, but I was done. Or like, I got concussed in training and during fight week or something like that. And he was like, I was just more fucked up than I realized. Who knows? So his record now falls to 22-10 with 1 draw. And he falls to 15-6 under the UFC banner. Unfortunately for Luque, he has now lost 3 of his last 4 to Bilal, Jeff Neal, and now Joaquin Buckley, the one victory being over RDA. That being said, Mark, what could and should be next for the Silent Assassin at welterweight?
I actually think there's a fight that works out really perfectly. People have talked about in the past the idea of Vicente Luque and Kevin Holland matching up with each other. And, I think people thought of it at the time as more of like a 2 guys on the way up type of thing. This is a different scenario now, but I still think it works really well. They're both clinging to the rankings. Luque's 14, Holland's 15. As you said, Luque's lost 3 of 4. Holland has lost 2 in a row. But they're both such exciting fighters, at least typically speaking. So I think you make this fight, you hope you get a banger, and you let one guy, get back on track.
100%. I love that. I mean, dude, welterweight is pretty stacked going even outside of the rankings. Like guys like Dalby, Fakhretdinov is still there. Randy Rude Boy Brown, he's so good.
That's the other name I considered saying, actually.
Brown.
Yeah, but haven't they fought? I think that's why I didn't say it. I think I checked. Yeah, I couldn't remember that fight that well, but yeah, Luque beat him a few years back.
Okay, let's keep rolling along here, Mark. 2-man show. By the way, anybody who's watching on YouTube, what do you think happened to Vicente Luque? Let us know down in the comments. Do you think? I mean, I cannot believe that Vicente Luque has that kind of quit in him. We have never ever seen that from him, and I cannot believe that is the scenario. I have to believe that it was some kind of injury, an injury or earlier concussion or something like that. Who knows? Who knows? But I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Okay.
For sure.
Speaking of weird finishes, man, this was the weirdest. It wasn't even weird. It was just unfortunate, bro. It was just unfortunate.
Yes.
In the middleweight division, Chris Weidman defeats Bruno Silva, ruled a technical unanimous decision. Originally ruled a TKO finish for Weidman, but then upon review, basically in the 3rd round of a 3-round fight, Bruno Silva closed the distance and tried to land a power punch, and Weidman defended and landed his own check hook, which dropped Bruno Silva, and then he pounced on him and finished him. But upon the replay review, Chris Weidman landed not 1, but 2 eye pokes. He managed to poke him in both eyes very quickly. Very quickly. I give him credit. And also not really land the punch. So Bruno Silva just falls to the ground in agony, having both of his eyeballs just punctured with fingernails. It sucked, dude. It sucked. And the one thing I can't understand, I just can't understand it. And if you know, Mark, please school me here. Why would that not be changed to a no contest?
So it's because it was not deemed as an intentional foul. It's because it was deemed accidental, and that because of an accidental foul, the fighter, Bruno Silva, could not continue. And we had made it through, I forget what the cutoff is. I forget if it's a round and a half or 2 rounds, but there's a cutoff. And if it's before that, then it has to be a no contest because there's not considered enough of a scorecard to score the fight. But because we had made it past the cutoff, it goes to the scorecards as opposed to being a no contest. And Weidman was ahead on all cards.
Do the judges...
And they took a point from Weidman as well for the for the accidental foul. So he lost a point for round 3.
Interesting.
Which all the judges had him winning. So that became 9-9. But he had already won round 1 and round 2, so it didn't matter UD for Weidman.
Do the judges score the 3rd round?
Yeah,
even though it didn't go to the 5 minutes.
Well, so I think that's a question too. I forget how many minutes had elapsed in that round, so I don't remember if the point doc was in round 3 actually, or if it was like an overall point doc of the prior 2. But either way, even with the point removed, Chris was still ahead. I'm actually going to look right now and see if the cards are up. Chris Weidman, Bruno Silva.
How bizarre.
Yeah, so they did score round 3.
For Weidman.
Yes. But then I guess the point was removed, and yeah.
Okay, so Mark, give us your take on how the first 2.5 rounds played out between Weidman and Silva.
I mean, as a whole, it was a mess, an absolute mess. And like you said, they added to the mess by giving him this TKO at first and then changing it to the technical decision. It was just no one really understood what was going on. And the finish was bad. Like, I wish I could say it wasn't, as a fan of Chris's, because I was pumped watching him do pretty well in there. But it was 2 eye pokes after there had already been 2 others in the fight. You know, I do get what Chris was saying about how you can't just drop like that from an eye poke, because Bruno Silva was reacting very dramatically after every poke. But, like, some pokes are just fucking bad, man. Like, It happens. So I do feel bad for Silva, but I also feel, I guess, somewhat okay about this because Chris Weidman was winning the entire fight. I really, at no moment in that fight did I feel like Chris Weidman was not ahead. And as funny as it is to say, Chris Weidman looked a lot like Chris Weidman in this fight. Yeah. Like he really did. The way he pressured, the way he found angles for his heavier strikes and found advantages in all positions. Like, that's what made him great. And defensively, too, he controlled the range well. He rolled with shots and took them the way he used to. He always used to be so good at that, at just stepping just to the edge of shots and rolling with them, and he was doing it in this fight. There was no issues with his chin that you could see. It was really a vintage Chris Weidman performance. And as I said, he had absolutely won every round. So I don't hate him getting a win here on his record, despite all the controversy. I also would not have hated if it was no contest, because 4 fucking eye pokes is a lot of eye pokes. Yeah. I'm happy for Chris to see him have a night where he got to feel like his body was performing at the level he thought it still could, and to get that validation. That had to feel really good for him. So I'm happy that he got to have a night where he felt like his old self in there. I know it's marred a little bit, but he seemed to feel all right about it. And yeah, it's tough for Silva, but like I said, there wasn't a whole lot going right for him in that fight anyway.
MMA is really a sport that just chews you up and spits you out. And the longer you stay in it, the more this is going to happen. Just looking at Silva at Weidman's record, it really is a tale of 2 halves for a guy who started out his pro career going 12-0, winning a world title from Anderson Silva, beating everybody, and now almost equal number of fights later, a lot more red on the record, man. You know, after that Rockhold loss, it's just been a different story. But I'm so glad to see him back in the win column here with a win over Bruno Silva. I think time will eventually forget or forgive how this fight played out, and we'll just look back and be glad to see that green W on the record there.
Yes.
So that being said, you know, he improves his UFC record now to 12-7. His overall record improves to 16-7. That was his, what number here? His 4th UFC decision win. As weird as it was, what now could or should be next for Chris Weidman, Mark?
So, you know, it's hard to match up Chris Weidman at this stage in his career. There's one line of thinking is like, he should kind of just be fighting like fellow vets. But, you know, like Tavares was that. Bruno Silva really wasn't that. But the issue with that is most of the true vets in this division are kind of the guys toward the top. Like most of the guys that have been around a while are still up there. You know, like whoever you want to say, Hermanson, Paul Craig, like, you know, Whitaker, and so on and so on. Obviously, he's not fighting these guys. That's not the level that he is at. So the choices that you have, I mean, you could go like a Mearshart to get him in there with a vet, but I kind of think you treat Chris Weidman like a guy who just got a win over Bruno Silva and who is planning on trying to be around for a few more fights, as he has said that he does. So I'm gonna put him in there with another contender that I think is at a similar level to where he's at, and that I think would make for a really interesting clash of styles. I don't want to say clash because they are both very good at this particular thing, but I'm going to say Rodolfo Vieira, who is deserving of a pretty big fight. He's coming off the win over Armin Petrosian, and I would just love to see Rodolfo Vieira try to submit Chris Weidman and see how Chris Weidman handles that.
Wow. The jiu-jitsu of Vieira and the wrestling pedigree of Chris Weidman would be pretty spicy. I mean, other guys around him, you have Malkoun coming off of a loss.
Coming off a win.
Oh, that's right. He's coming off of a win as well. I wouldn't want to match up with Brad Tavares again with those leg kicks.
No, he just fought Tavares.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
I personally, I would love him to walk away on a win. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but he ain't doing that.
That's best case scenario for Weidman at this point. I don't think he's going to make a title run. He's just too far.
No, he's not going to make a title run. No,
that's what I'm saying.
Certainly not going to do that.
If he wins his next one, then he's got to walk away, because then he can say he's walking away on a win streak.
If he wins his next one, I think he's going to ask for a ranked fighter.
I know. What about GM3 for Weidman? What do you think of that?
That was the name I just said. I said if you wanted to go with a vet, that's probably the one that would make sense.
Yeah. But you're going to go with Vieira. Wow, tough fight.
Yeah, I mean, look, the GM3 one works too. To watch them grapple, I would sign up for that as well. That's a cool one. But let's trying to go outside the box a little bit.
I'm just looking at Vieira now. And he's not a guy. He doesn't have a single knockout in the UFC. I see what you're doing there, Mark. I see what you're doing there.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
You're keeping our boy safe.
Yes, that's correct.
I like it.
Yeah, he had to deal with Tavares and Silva, man. Silva was very much a knockout threat, and he navigated it. So let's let him get in there with someone who's not such a knockout threat.
There you go. Okay, let's keep marching down this card here. Let's see. Nursulton Ruziboev defeats Sedriques Dumas in the first round by knockout via uppercut and ground punches in the middleweight division. What were your thoughts on how this fight played out?
So this one started the weirdness of the night. Or it didn't start the weirdness, actually, but it started the eye poke controversies. Yep. There was other weirdness before this one. And Ruziboev did poke Dumas in the eye. That much is clear. So, as clear as the Weidman one. And here the ref didn't see it. Should the ref have seen it and given Dumas time to recover? Yes. In a perfect world, that's what would have happened here. But Dumas also made a terrible decision in there to turn away completely from Ruziboev, searching for the ref the way that he did. You got to be a little bit smarter than that. We've seen this time and time again where guys choose to just look away and try to talk to the ref, and it never goes well. And Ruziboev was absolutely right to jump on him the way that he did and put him out. The ref had not said a word. He had not motioned anything. So yeah, you can't really fault Ruziboev for going for it the way that he did. And to his credit, similar to what I said about Weidman, maybe even more so here, before all this happened, Ruziboev was clearly winning this fight. It hadn't even been a full round, to be fair. So who knows what changes as the fight goes on, but it was all him to that point. He was totally in control. The step in right hand was landing beautifully for him all fight long. Dumas really wasn't offering anything in return. It seemed like he hadn't even necessarily figured out how to deal with what was in front of him yet. Yep. So, you'd like to think Ruziboev would have won anyway, which makes you feel a little bit better about the result. But I guess truthfully, who knows?
Yeah, man. Weird night with eye pokes, man. Weird night with eye pokes. I'm going to ask you about Ruziboev, and then we're going to talk about those eye pokes a little bit more. But Ruziboev, his record improves now. Where the fuck is his record? There he is. His record now improves to 34-8 with 2 draws. In the UFC, he's now 2-0. 2 knockouts over Bruno, the Hulk Ferreira, and Sedriques Dumas now. Let's go, Mark. Where are we going next at middleweight with the fighter out of Uzbekistan?
So this is as far as I got pre-show in terms of predetermining my matchups. I kind of ran out of time today. So I am looking at this now. He already beat Bruno Ferreira, which is legit considering Bruno Ferreira has knocked out Gregory Rodriguez, who has a solid resume in this division. So I was surprised that he got someone as low as Dumas for his second fight. I get it that he's a little bit unproven, and maybe they wanted to see what he had to offer, but I'd like to move him up the line some here.
How far up you want to go?
You know what? Nah, I'm not going to do that. Has Joe Pyfer been booked yet?
I don't think so. Be a great fight.
That might be what I do. Let's see. No, he has not. I'll throw that out. I will go with Joe Pyfer.
Joe Pyfer coming off of a loss to Jack Hermanson very recently. Okay.
Yeah. He's a tough guy to tell because his record pre-UFC was kind of all over the place. He had a lot of names on it that were guys with spotty records and all this, but 2 fights into the UFC, he looks like he's absolutely fantastic. So he certainly seems like the real deal at this point. So I don't know that there's any reason to keep slow rolling him.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, his record is deep too. Like he's got a lot of fights on his record, man. And
he does. He has a ton.
Yeah, I agree. I think they should go, strap him to a rocket at this point. Let's go. Let's see what he can do. Okay. Couple more here. Kyle Nelson versus Bill Algeo. Kyle Nelson defeats Bill Algeo by knockout in round number 1, the official time, 4 minutes of round 1. Your thoughts, Mark?
I'll tell you what, man. I mean, this is an obvious statement, I guess, but Kyle Nelson has figured it out. This man started his UFC career 1-4. 1-4. And he is now finishing Bill Algeo in 1. Like, I don't really know what to make of it, man. I don't know if it's been a mental switch for Nelson, because I don't feel like we're watching anything so different from the game of Kyle Nelson that we've seen all along. But, man, I mean, the win streak is now at 3, and he looked great here. He dropped Algeo early. Algeo did recover, and the fight started to look kind of how I expected it to. Algeo's movement and his variety were working. And I was watching. I was kind of like, all right, this fight's going to shift now as it goes on, and Bill gets a little more dialed in here. And then next thing you know, it's another bomb of an overhand right from Kyle Nelson. He pours it on. I'm not going to say I loved the stoppage, but I'm also not going to say I hated it. There's an argument to be made that if you're going to let Algeo push through what he was pushing through for however many seconds that ref let that go, then you have to wait until something more happens that changes it, because it kind of just the same thing was just still happening. He hadn't gotten necessarily more hurt. He was still just getting touched, but not going down, and still, waving him on. So nothing really happened to differentiate from the prior 20 seconds, I didn't think, but it was a lot. He was eating shots. So again, I don't hate it. It was a lot of shots, and you don't want to take anything away from Kyle Nelson, because that was a awesome performance and a huge win for him. And again, it's just a guy who is now very much on the map, who seemed like he was going to be a UFC washout. So it's a wild career turnaround for him.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, his first 5 fights in the UFC, he went 1-4, and then he had a draw. So you think, the guy only has 1 victory in his first 6 outings.
Yep.
And after the draw, you think this guy's probably going to get cut, but then he gets another one, and next thing you know, don't look now, he's 1-3 his last 3.
Yep.
So here we go. His record now improves to 16-5 with 1 draw. with the UFC. He's now 4-4 with one draw. Of course, that draw being with Joo Choi back in 2023. So what do you think, Mark? Who is around him? I see on one ranking site, let's see, Zalal, who just come off a win as well, is near him. What do you think? What would you say?
It's maybe not the sexiest name on earth, but it's kind of another guy who he's almost Kyle Nelson-esque in that he is up in this area a bit surprisingly, maybe, and that's Muhammadjan Naimov. He recently had that huge win over Nathaniel Wood. He is, as I said, he's kind of in the same place where it's like he's not too far outside of these ranked fighters, but it's a little bit like, man, is he really this good? And Kyle Nelson's kind of the same. So for whatever reason, my mind is wanting to pair the two of them up. So that is what I will do.
Another guy who coming off of a win recently, a little bit higher, I think, probably Julian Erosa. They could match up well, maybe. What do you think?
Did he fight Erosa? No. Who were his initial losses to?
Kyle Nelson.
I don't know why that's sort of in my mind.
No, I don't think so.
No, he didn't fight Erosa. Okay. So yes. Yeah, I don't hate that. That works for sure. Oh no, it was in my head because I was thinking about I had a Rosa connection in my head with Kyle Nelson because I was thinking about how Nelson beat Fernando Padilla and people kind of thought it was all about Padilla having a bad night. But you look at it now and it's very easy to be like, man, Padilla's pretty good. Like he finished Julian Erosa, and how good does that make Kyle Nelson for beating him? Like it's like the narrative can flip on its head if we accept that Kyle Nelson is actually good.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Okay, next fight. We have a split decision in the welterweight division. Chidi Bang Bang Njokuani goes home with the victory, defeating Rhys McKee by split decision. The scorecard's red. Here we go. Let me shoot this ad away. Sal D'Amato, 30-27 for Njokuani. Mike Lee, 30-27 for Njokuani. And Muna Kierdo. That's a newer name. I haven't heard that guy's name very much.
Yeah.
He scored it 29-28
That was
for
the
Rhys McKee.
person that had the baffling scorecard for Rhys McKee.
That's right. 29-28 for Rhys McKee. Mark, your thoughts?
Sorry if I was just talking over you. You froze for me.
That's all good.
I didn't realize that you froze. So I think we were both talking. Yeah, I don't know what this fight was from Rhys McKee. Maybe it was just that the calf kicks added up really quickly and he was just that compromised. And if that is the case, then credit to Chidi for that, because Rhys McKee came out and fought a really solid round one. Like he really fought it exactly how he needed to. He mixed it up. You know, it wasn't any crazy round, but he did a really good job to control the fight. And from that point on, he came out in round two and there was really no game plan anymore from him other than trying to stall against the cage. And my only thought is that it was from how much he was feeling those calf kicks. And, you know, there were a lot of them early. Like in that first round, I think Chidi landed about a dozen calf kicks. So my guess is that was it. And that after 5 minutes, Rhys McKee was just not the same fighter because his movement really got hampered.
Yeah.
So props to Chidi for that. You know, he didn't look amazing necessarily, but he fought a smart fight and he pulled away as the fight went on, which is the opposite of what people were concerned with Chidi dropping down to welterweight. Everyone was wondering if he could handle the weight cut and if his cardio could handle it, myself included. I was very concerned. And I got to say, he looked fine. His cardio looked fine. His movement looked fine. Everything looked good. So good for him. Got himself a win, and we will see what he can do as a welterweight moving forward.
Yeah, man. Impressive and hopeful stuff for Njokuani, moving down to 170 pounds for the first time, coming off of three consecutive losses at middleweight to Gregory Robocop Rodriguez, Albert Duraev, and Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. He said, I got to change something up, and he dropped down 15-pound cut now to welterweight, but he gets the W over Rhys McKee, and now he improves his UFC record to an even 3-3 and his overall pro record to now, where is it here? 23-10 with 1 no contest. That being said, interesting to match a guy up at welterweight, Mark, who has only had 1 fight there under the UFC banner. But if you were the matchmaker, what would you do?
Yeah, I'm debating it right now. You want to give him, I think, an exciting fight since he didn't really have a chance to have that here. And you want to give him a chance to, potentially get a knockout and get some buzz on his name as a welterweight. I'm trying to think who fits that bill. That's obviously, a bit of a step up from Rhys McKee. I think I'm going to go Jeremiah Wells. He has established himself in this division. He has the win over Court McGee, he has the win over Matt Semmelsberger, but he is coming off 2 losses in a row. But he packs plenty of pop. You would think if you match those 2 guys up, somebody may get slept, and it's a chance for Chidi to get a win that establishes himself a bit as a welterweight. So that's what I will do.
Nice. Okay, I think 1 more here, and then we will move on to the rankings update here. No, 2 more. I'm sorry, 2 more. Because we did not preview this one last week, but it was so noteworthy that let's talk about it a little bit. In the featherweight division, Nate Landwehr gets another knockout victory over Jamall Emmers in round number 1, the official time 4:43 of the first round, followed by an all-time promo on the mic in the octagon. So give me your thoughts on all that.
You got to love this man. He's so fun every time he's in there. In this fight, he made such phenomenal adjustments. He was getting touched often and hard from range, right from jump in this fight. And after it happened a couple times, he reset himself and he bit down and he said, all right, I need to ugly this up. I need to get inside. And he was almost entirely forward from that point. Any time that he had to back up, he really tried to minimize it and make it like 1 step where he then froze and held his ground and didn't let Emmers walk toward him. He pushed into the dirty boxing and he found a home for some big ones and he changed the fight. So props to him. Typical Nate the Train, honestly. An awesome finish. I love the dude on the mic. I love how every single time he says Nate the Train in the UFC as if it's like his debut. Meanwhile, he's been here for like fucking 8 fights or some shit by now, but he still says it every single time as if it's news that he's in the UFC. But yeah, it was awesome start to finish.
Yeah, he's 35, and yes, you're exactly right. 8 fights. He's 5-3 now in the UFC. So
that was a guess. Props to me.
Very good. Very good. Let's see. Let's talk about where he goes from here, man. That promo, I'm not gonna lie, was it a little corn? Was it a little cheesy? Yeah, but I might have gotten some goosebumps, man. What was his line about Jean-Claude Van? Damn, it was so good, dude. It was so
I did not even catch that. Jesus. Oh man,
it was so good. I love that. I think it was Bisping was like trying to like talk to him about the fight, and every time he gave him back the mic, he just like yelled more.
Yes.
Yeah, baby.
Yes.
Let's see. He's back in the win column after losing a decision loss against Dan Ige, which snapped a 3-fight win streak. So now he is 4 for his last 5 mark at welterweight. So the train is still rolling along here. And what is the next stop for Nate the Train Landwehr?
I'll throw out 2 guys. I'm trying to give Nate another action fight here. I don't want to give him some boring wrestler since he's here for our entertainment. Coincidentally, they have the same last name, but that's just how it shook out when I was trying to look for exciting guys who are around his area. And that is Du Ho Choi or Sung Woo Choi. I think either of them could be a crazy scrap.
Isn't that funny how that works out sometimes in these divisions?
Yes. Names. Yes.
I like it. Fight of the night honors earned from the promotion for Mr. Nate Landwehr. And well earned, man. Well earned. That guy is must-watch MMA. He really is. Not only because his brashness and all that and his energy, and he is an action fighter for sure. He brings it. He looks for the finish always, and that's a huge part of it. But the dude is talented, man. I think he's a really skillful mixed martial artist.
Yeah. Yeah. Another idea I wouldn't hate is Bill Algeo. I know he's coming off the loss on this card that we just talked about, but he is more established in this division than Nate is, so it still is, a step upward for Nate, and that could be a crazy fight too.
For sure, man. For sure. Okay, one more, and then we will move on. So here we go. In the women's strawweight division, Virna Jandiroba gets the win over Luque Godinez after 3 rounds. It was a unanimous decision for the Brazilian here. Give us your thoughts on how this fight played out over 15 minutes.
So I'll say this. The first time I watched this fight, I was really frustrated with Luque. I thought she wasn't disengaging enough and that she was too willing to be connected with Virna and that it cost her the fight. And I saw since then a lot of tweets, saying the same thing about, her fight IQ was terrible. So in my head, I was like, yeah, I agree. But I got to say, once I rewatched the fight, I don't really feel like that was the case as much as I thought. The round where Luque willingly grappled, maybe more than she should have, was round 2, but that's the round she actually won on at least one card. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2. And I thought she won it on my card. In round 1 and round 3, which are the rounds that cost her the fight, she really was trying to continually disengage and to get back to the striking with Virna. It's just, I think that Virna is better than a lot of us give her credit for. I think we all underrate her. She just finds ways to get inside, and it's not always pretty, but she's absolutely dogged. She wears on you. She has a fantastic back take, which was a problem for Lupita, I think, in each of those rounds, once in each of those rounds. And even though Luque probably won more minutes of the fight, Virna just found ways to steal both round 1 and round 3 once she was able to finally get inside and get to her grappling. So I think it's just that, people maybe don't give Virna the credit that she deserves as for how tricky she is to keep off of you. Now, I didn't think Luque looked great. I thought she looked slower in her decision making. I thought less sure of herself than she has in her recent fights. I don't know if it was because she was so concerned with not getting pushed back to the cage, but I didn't think it was any great performance from her, and I really thought she could break through here and that this was a big opportunity for her that she missed. But I want to give Virna her credit for continually finding ways to win at a high level.
100%, man. She improves now to 20-3. Speaking of being better than we're giving her credit for, and under the UFC banner, she improves to 6-3. That was her 3rd decision win with the UFC to date. Those 3 losses are all under the UFC banner. All of them decision losses. She has never been finished as a pro. And here we go. Let's talk about what could be next for her at 115 pounds mark.
Yeah, I don't have a clue, to be quite honest, because she is so close to the top. We have Weili and Jan fighting each other. We have Tatiana Suarez, waiting and maybe going to fight Amanda Lemos. I forget if that's actually been rebooked already. I think that's kind of what everyone was expecting to happen, but I don't know if that has actually been officially booked. Let's check that quickly. So no, it has not. So I guess that opens the door a little bit. Maybe it is that, and I know Tatiana got hurt, but they supposedly it wasn't anything terrible. So if Tatiana is just going to walk into a title shot, which I guess is possible, then that leaves Lemos out there. So they could go that route for Virna. She has earned a fight that big. If not that, if we are going to get Tatiana and Lemos like a lot of people thought, then you could wait and see who comes out of the fight at UFC 300 between Jessica Andrade and Marina Rodriguez. Obviously, if it's Marina, that doesn't work considering Virna just beat her. But if it is Jessica, then Virna and Jessica could also be a great scrap.
Okay, man. Let's put a bow on this fight night. Tell us who rose and who fell in your rankings system.
All right. Let's pull these babies up. Okay. So we had 3 risers and 2 fallers from this weekend. I will do the fallers first. Working up from the bottom of the card was Bill Algeo. He was my number 26 ranked featherweight coming into this fight. He takes a little bit of a tumble down to number 32 after the loss to Kyle Nelson. The other faller, it's only 3 spots. Usually I try to go like 4 or more when I'm picking names to put on here, but I felt like it was a little bit significant for a guy who has been perennially in the top 10, and that is Vicente Luque. So he has fallen from number 10 to number 13 in my welterweight rankings after the loss to Buckley. So we'll see if my man can right the ship. And then the risers, some all pretty significant ones, all more than 10 spots, or one is 10, so 10 or more, I should say. But again, from the bottom, we have Jacob Malkoun. He was my number 40 ranked middleweight coming in. He gets the W over Andre Petrosky, which jumps him up to number 29 in the middleweight division. So a nice move for him. Then we have the guy we spoke about, obviously moving up the line here, which was Kyle Nelson. He was my number 43 ranked featherweight coming in. He is now all the way up at number 25. So a really legitimizing jump for Kyle Nelson. And then the man in the co-main, Joaquin Buckley. He had been creeping up, steadily in these welterweight ranks. He was my number 22 welterweight entering this fight, and he now makes the big jump and is my number 12 ranked welterweight after the win.